Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm hosting again. I'm Dan Sissick, and I'm here in Las Vegas. And we're going through the book, Whatever Arises. Love that. I love Revolution That Begins With You by Matt Kahn. Here's the book. It's also available on, I think I always say it wrong, Scribd. Is that right? Am I saying it right? Okay, Scribd. And I know that's what Catherine reads from. And it's a great way to get the book if you don't want to just buy, but use the Scribs subscription. And the pages are a little different, though, on Scribd compared to the book. So I don't know. We're going to be starting with an empathic child, but before we get started, we're still in chapter 4. I'll let everybody jump on and say hi and introduce themselves.
I'm Angel Studebaker down here in South Carolina.
Good morning. It's Samantha Studebaker Carl up here in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Good morning.
Well, so I think Karen has frozen, so that's Karen Lohoff. She's down in Arizona, and looks like she's back with us again. And then now I let everybody else jump out.
Hey, good morning. It's Jason Roberts in Tampa Bay, Florida. Great to be here.
Hello, it's Catherine Clement. Great to be here. And I'm sorry that for some reason when Karen starts talking, it freezes up and I only caught like the first 2 words or something. I'm Karen Lohoff. So I do the reading, so I'm going to flip over to my Scribd and get started. So in Scribd, we are on page 94. Chapter 4, An Empathic Child. As I came to understand the inner workings of ego in adulthood, I instantly remembered myself as an empathic child. I clearly saw my young self as an energetic sponge, sensing the unresolved emotional debris in the hearts of everyone around me. I then saw that, as a very small child, I had made a subconscious decision. If others seem blocked and unwilling to love me as I am, then let me replicate the conditioning I feel in their field in an attempt to free their heart. In such an innocent way, I thought that once they were free, excuse me, just a second. Okay. In such an innocent way, I thought that once they were free of the conditioning I felt weighing them down, there would be nothing blocking their heart from giving me the love I so eagerly desired. Even though my intention was to take on their pain to lighten the load, I was merely replicating their perception of experiences within the cells of my body. As this process of replication occurred, I was attempting to be a perfect mirror of their conditioning, hoping that if they could see themselves reflected in me, maybe they would be more emotionally open with me. On some level, I did this to be more like the world I viewed as a way of creating resonance with the overstimulated nervous systems of those around me. I then saw how the overstimulated nervous systems of all beings created a global energy field known as the collective unconscious. This collective unconscious had manufactured a cultural sense of agreement that an overstimulated nervous system is the normal way in which human beings operate in everyday society. As those memories continued, I saw that prior to coming to this planet and incarnating into my family, I was like an angel sent from heaven who agreed to replicate this conditioning in order to inspire greater awakening for all. I agreed to do this. So at a certain point in my evolutionary process, I would begin waking up to transmute the conditioning I had collected. Through the interconnection of one, I knew such a process of transmutation would create a ripple effect to wake up all beings in existence. I realized that I purposefully incarnated into a family to take on the conditioning they carried as a way of liberating countless lineages of conditioning throughout history that had yet to be resolved. As I started to understand that an attachment to ego was literally as gripping and intense as one's nervous system is overstimulated, I started to recognize some very interesting connections. When the door of your heart is closed, you tend to feel separate from the truth of your own divinity. This makes it nearly involuntary to negotiate, fight, defend, and seek ways to regularly enhance an imaginary identity of ego. With no malice toward the phenomenon of ego, I saw it as a place my innocence hid until my healing journey began. As I learned to love what arises, I noticed how quickly my body would relax. In a state of relaxation, my innocence felt safe enough to come out of hiding. The more I relaxed, the more consciousness expanded. As this occurred, I spontaneously experienced the opening of chakras or energy centers in the body, the activation of dormant DNA strands, the emergence of greater intuitive gifts, along with many other spiritual milestones that many pursue with exhaustion. With the emergence of these activations that only love can inspire, I was able to harmonize with life in a way that everything seemed to conspire in my favor. It also became apparent that anything occurring in my favor was also the highest possibility for everyone around me. From that renewed space of energetic alignment, I could manifest things just as quickly as I imagined them, while drawing towards me more conscious versions of each person, even if it drastically differed from the way they acted outside of my presence. Even throughout the various stages of enlightenment and beyond, I discovered that every single goal explored on a spiritual path effortlessly occurs as your nervous system is unraveled, one I love you at a time. As a result, the need to fight, defend, and negotiate vanished as a heart-centered consciousness was revealed. From that space, there was no one to wrong or any need to be right. There was simply a willingness to notice the activity of life and respond with love for the evolution of all.
I
You want to
think
stop there?
yeah, I think that's good because I think we'll probably cover a lot as we jump in and start on this. For me, I wanted to go back where in the beginning where he's talking about becoming more like the people around or mirroring the people around him as a young empathic I can't say the word right child. I feel I don't think I do exactly that same thing, but when I'm around people and I'm in situations, at times I feel I tend to kind of try to mirror or feel or empathize the same thing that they're getting, so that way I can resonate or have that same energy that they have. And I've never realized I just do it, so I just do it naturally, because personally I don't like conflict in a lot of ways, unless I'm really pushed or put in a corner or something like that. I tend to want to work towards helping people and helping them through whatever they're going through. And it was interesting seeing what he was saying there, because it's kind of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I kind of understand what he was saying and how he felt about that. I don't know, Catherine, I'm sure you probably have done stuff like that way more than I've done, but I don't know about any of the others of you, but it was just interesting to see that written and him saying that, because it kind of made a bell go off in my head. And it's like, oh, that's might be partly why I tend to, in all situations, kind of try to not always, but try to kind of emulate or, get to a common ground. I guess a common ground is what I would say.
Yeah, as someone who has had some shared experiences with you, Dan, I think, it's always challenging having a foot in two different worlds, because there's always like that polarity pull between the two. And I have that in so many things, but in this one, I think it's a combination of a lot of kids from abusive backgrounds become chameleons, and they do that as a survival mechanism, because they figure if they're mirroring that other person, they're not going to get their butt beat or shoved in the closet or whatever happens. So, but having said that, that's obviously from like the human perspective. Looking at it from the soul perspective, I think everyone is empathic to a certain point, and how much they allow that probably determines that point, because it can get super, super uncomfortable when you are processing everybody else's stuff along with your own. It just can get completely overwhelming. And so a lot of empaths, when they start picking up on these different feelings and experiences, they get overwhelmed, and then they shut that off, or tone it down, or just completely block it out. So I think it's sort of a combination there. But I have no doubt whatsoever that we came here with the intention of taking on those things to assist with the progression of consciousness. And the way he worded it, it's all in, I don't know, woo-woo words. I mean, his words are beautiful, but to me, they're woo-woo words. And these concepts, I mean, shamans have been doing this since time began, taking on other people's stuff and getting rid of it, or transmuting it, or bringing more light into it, however you want to say it. Some people are comfortable with woo-woo words and some people aren't, but these are very ancient, timeless concepts we're talking about here.
I'll pose another question out to everybody, because I've heard, and I think we've talked before about like the collective consciousness and stuff and things like that. But here he talks about the collective unconsciousness, and I'd never really ever heard of that or even thought of that. Have any of you ever heard of that or come across that? Or it's kind of a new thought to me.
It's not new. It's just his play on words, because a lot of healers refer to the collective consciousness as the collective unconsciousness, because most people are unconscious.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression that it's this. Yeah, he's just referring to the same thing, just changing the wording of it. But I was thinking when you were talking about how we tend to shut down what what we're maybe capable of, and I do remember when I was younger, when I was a teenager and then into my 20s, that I feel like I was a lot more. I saw more, and see is not the right word, but that's the only way I know how to describe it, is that I saw more than what I can now. And I think that, and I've gone through different phases in my life where, it'll seem like I'm more open, and then other times I'll be more closed off. Like right now, I'm struggling. And, when I was in Georgia, I was more open. And but it's interesting because I think a lot of times some of it has to do with what kind of pain it causes you. Like, Catherine, like you talk about it being so much, and then you have to either get control over it so that you only see what you want to see, or I feel like in my case it was more of I saw stuff that I didn't like, and so then I stopped wanting to see it. And that's more of an unconscious thing, I think, than it is a conscious thing, because it's things that they cause pain, and even though they're not like majorly traumatic, it's still an uncomfortable thing. And I feel like I've shut off a lot of that because of that discomfort. And on another aspect of it, the like seeing some aspect of the other side, whether that is seeing ghosts or feeling energies or that sort of thing, I feel like I am very capable of doing that. And yet at the same time, I have kind of a wall up. I can feel this wall inside of myself that is like I'm not allowing it, and I'm not entirely sure why. But at the same time, I can sit here and say, well, why. It's uncomfortable. So I mean, that's what it feels like to me, or that's my best way of kind of explaining some aspect of all of that. And but yeah.
It can be pretty confusing when you're, oh, sorry, Dan. It can be pretty confusing when you're, as adults, we can kind of pick up on cues and sense, but when you're really, really feeling exactly what they feel, and you have an adult that has a smile on their face, maybe telling you one thing, and then their mind and their body is feeling you're a burden, I can't take this, all of the inner turmoil that adults go through. When you feel all that, it's and then you realize the person is lying to you basically, and they're probably not really lying. They're just you're not supposed to be able to pick up on what other people are feeling, really. So they're doing the adult thing of being the nice parent or whatever, but inside they're hiding all of those trapped emotions and stresses. And so as an empath, when you pick up on that and you realize, you can get to a point where you just feel like, okay, nobody in the world is truthful because everybody's always hiding stuff, and there's such a contradiction in the feelings. It gets really confusing as a child, and children will often shut off their empathic abilities when they feel the pain from that other person, especially when it's coming through as something that feels untruthful. It causes fear of the world, sort of thing, because you just don't feel like you can trust what anybody says, if that makes any sense.
It does, and it goes back. And I think both you and Samantha both said this before in the past, that also I think as kids we are the more innocent beings, still open and wanting to be open to everything. It's just that as we're open and wanting to be open to everything, that's when we see and feel. And because going back to that, everything is energy out there, and we all sense it, we all feel it when we're in the room and we're sitting there and we're talking to somebody, but in our head we're going, they're lying, we know they're lying, or they're putting up a facade, or we sense that in our heads. We're like, okay, something's not right here, but yet we play along, so to speak, and because at that point, I think, going back to what both of you said, we don't want to, for lack of a better word, engage in that and take that on because of things in the past that we might have dealt with or felt or seen, or, And it's like, no, this is too reminiscent of that. And I don't want to deal with that, because it's basically like we feel like we're being lied to, or we don't feel everything's on the up and up. And I think if we're honest, we all do try to hide a lot of what we're going through and what's going on to save face for ourselves and project this feeling of that we're, this is okay and we're doing fine and nothing's wrong, when deep down. And I think that's why maybe lately, over the last couple of years, mental health, through the pandemic, has become such a more open subject, I guess, because more people are sensing, I don't want to say trauma, but in a sense, trauma, because of all, the isolation, this, that, the other thing, everything that's been going on, that we're all dealing with some deep stuff. And in some ways, we don't know how to handle it or deal with it. And it's affecting us. And so it's really, and I think maybe that's, going back to a little bit of what maybe some of the things you said, Cancer, that there's a more conscious awakening going on out there, and people are more open to it now in some ways.
I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to finish that thought process before I started talking about something a little bit different from this section. Does anybody else have another thought on that? Okay. So when Catherine was reading this other section in here where it talks about when the door of your heart is closed, you tend to feel separate from the truth of your own divinity. This makes it nearly involuntary to negotiate, fight, defend, and seek ways to regularly enhance an imaginary identity of ego. And then it goes on and it says, as I learned to love what arises, I noticed how quickly my body would relax. And in a state of relaxation, my innocence felt safe enough to come out of hiding. The more I relaxed, the more my consciousness expanded. And then a little bit further down, from that renewed space of energetic alignment, I could manifest things just as quickly as I imagined them, while drawing toward me more conscious version of each person, even if it was drastically different from the way they acted outside of my presence. Oh, that's a whole nother thing that we could talk about right there. But what this reminded me of is different types of meditations where they talk about relaxing every aspect of your body. And there's one that I used to use a lot where it would literally walk you through relaxing, the top of your skull, and then your face, and then the back of your head and your neck, and you would just relax and relax and relax all the way down to your toes. And when I would do that regularly, I feel like I was more connected to my spiritual self, or like it says, the kind of the consciousness expanding and that sort of thing. And what's interesting to me about all of that, and this whole concept of when you're able to do that more, is that things manifest in your life easier. It doesn't feel like a struggle, et cetera, et cetera. And and I experienced that a lot back when I was meditating and doing those meditations very regularly. But what I'm getting at is, what's weird is that now I don't meditate as much. I'm not doing that as much. I'm struggling more. And yet there's some kind of part of me that is not feeling this, okay, we'll get back to meditation attitude and doing it. It's like I'll say it and then I won't do it. And it's just a weird thing. It's like I feel like I have all these stresses in my life that I didn't have just a few years ago. And I know that the solution is to get back into meditation and relax and stop tensing up more and more as things get more frustrating. And I guess that's kind of, that's one of the struggles that I'm going through right now. And it's weird how we do that to ourselves, where we know the solution and yet we still are so stuck in our trying to control everything that we can't just relax and love what arises and trust. That's such a huge part of it, I think, is that trusting that, okay, we can take that time, that 20 minutes, or, well, for me to do that particular meditation, I think it's like 40 minutes or something. And but for whatever reason, in my daily existence right now, I just can't seem to get myself to do it consistently. And I don't know, it's weird. It's just kind of a weird thing.
I kind of get what you're saying, because I've been wanting to get back into, I found some YouTube videos that were helping me do some exercising to, because with me finding out about my blood pressure and stuff and things like that, I feel that they would probably help, along with wanting to eat a little better, which I have not totally done. In my head, I keep saying, I'm like you, I keep saying, I need to do this. I need to take the time and energy, right, go through some of the links that a friend sent me about foods that help with blood pressure and things like that. But have I done that? No, because I keep saying, oh, I got this to do, I got that to do, because in the back of my mind, it's almost like in the back of my mind, I'm telling myself, oh, I don't really have the bad problem. It's not that bad of a problem. And it's almost like I don't want to admit it to myself too, that yes, I need to, I think we lie to ourselves sometimes too, and think, well, it's not that bad, or I don't really need to do that because, I'm doing okay. But in my head, I know that if I do this, it will probably help in the long run and help me. And it might even help me get more to a more balanced state, where, because now I'm consciously and intentionally doing that, it'll help me feel better. And then I'll relax more. And maybe that will also help bring the blood pressure down in a more normal way too, instead of being so, and to me that, it's kind of like we're our own worst enemy sometimes. And also, sometimes we think that we've accepted things, or that we're okay with things where we're at right here and now. But in actuality, no, we really don't like it. We really want to be back in, where we were before, because that seemed to be the spot where we were most in tune with everything. And I think part of the learning is learning to be in tune with ourselves, but in tune with everything out there, no matter where we're at, and accepting that. And I think, wow, that's a revelation for me. Just learning to, as the book says, whatever rises, love that. Well, okay, if that's part of the thing, no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, love that and accept it, and don't look to where I was before, because I'm not there. And because of choices that I actively made or agreed to, I am here. So there's something in those choices and those things that I decided on there that brought me here. So I need to love that and accept it, and open myself to that, and allow myself to say, yes, I'm not necessarily feeling it, but I accept it. I love that. I love me, or I am self-love, and kind of put that all together and say, okay, let me move forward. And like I said, this is just something that's bringing up for me right now, even me personally. I'm like, okay, listen to your own words, Dan, a little bit, because, I got to preach at myself a little bit too, that, it's not just for everybody else either.
That's like Catherine has said before, is that, you know, a lot of times what we say on here, you know, sure, it's probably helpful to people, but more often than not, these things that we say are things that we need to say to ourselves and remind ourselves about, for sure. But yeah, I thought it was interesting how he shared this aspect of, you know, things were just manifesting faster because he was more connected, and that even with people, that that was kind of the next part in that last section, was that even people would change the way they acted based on his being more connected. And that's just a fascinating thing, and I've experienced that a little bit too. And again, it's like, why can't I just do what it is I think I know I need to do? And you know, and I've made changes in my life over the years. There's been a number of different things that I've managed to make changes on that have stuck, you know, whereas sometimes, you know, it's like exercise, not so much, you know, but at the same time, I don't not exercise at all. It's just more of a, you know, not a regular routine per se. So
I tried to hop out, and then I turned off my camera, and then I unmuted myself, but then I had a loss for words.
you're blocking yourself.
Yeah. Things aren't in alignment, or there's some unconscious blocking going on, I guess, here. You know, yeah, it seems that we are kind of almost hardwired to take on this conditioning, and be excellent blockers of and excellent in closing ourselves off, and then just muddling through in a state that we feel like we're comfortable, yet we have an instinctive notion that, or a desire to want more growth, to want more love, and to be open. And yet when we know of a specific way to attain at least a smidgen of that connection or that openness, it's like swimming upstream, or, you know, pulling our own teeth, or you know, it's just so hard sometimes to get out of that, or get into that, or however you want to put it. So I find that interesting. But it's good to know that, so that we can, you know, to expect it and then have a plan to get through it. I've been learning and hearing more about state, as in not state of mind, but like an overall state of being, to try to get into an overall specific state of being in order to have a better experience at something, or to, you know, kind of talk ourselves into something, but maybe more of like an energetic type of a way, you know, wake up and, you know, wake ourselves up so that we can be alert for something, maybe. But that, and I'm seeing that being in a particular state for something, it seems like Matt's talking about putting himself into a state of like mirrored like energy, so that he can be more open to noticing recognizing that of those he's speaking with or interacting with. And so it's occurring to me that, that type of a change in our own energy isn't necessarily just, getting, building ourselves up so we can go out and speak in front of people, or, but it's also the same as calming ourselves down so we can listen, maybe, maybe there's different states for different interactions that we might be able to see. But it does seem interesting to me that that's might be a universal type of a thing there. Oh, and one question real quick. I was just curious if anybody knew or had any gleaning from this, with the reading at this point, like how old Matt was in this development in his life. Thanks.
Yeah, he was a young child, like 6 or so, I think, when a lot of this stuff was going on. And I want to take us back to the bottom of the very, very first page that I read, because I think there's a huge lesson there that can be completely overlooked. Let me flip over and reread it before I comment. So he says, if others seem blocked and unwilling to love me as I am, then let me replicate the conditioning I feel in their field in an attempt to free their heart. Now that's pretty woo-woo language there, so I'm just going to break it down. The point I want to make is how amazing it is that this child, because he was just a child at this time, was still open enough to recognize that if someone is blocked and unwilling to love me as I am, let me open their heart instead of if others seem blocked and unwilling to love me as I am, that means I'm unlovable. That's what most of us do, right? If somebody is unwilling to love us as we are, we just automatically say, oh, I'm unlovable. We don't jump to, oh, let me open their heart. So I think that's a huge lesson right there. As a matter of fact, I might just write a children's book about that one, because that's a big one. If we could all, because we all encounter those things every day in our life. We may not think that we're thinking that way, but when someone, look at all of the controversy right now about younger folks being on social media and the effects that it has. And of course, most recently with the Olympics, I saw a news section where one of the Olympians was getting so much hate on social media. And it's real easy if you put a post up and nobody likes it, or you're having a discussion with somebody and they don't agree with you or whatever. It's so easy to default to, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, they don't like me, I don't know what I'm talking about. I need to study another 3 years on this subject before I can make a post on it. I mean, we tell ourselves all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Instead of looking at it like, if they can't accept me as I am, that's their problem. What can I do? At least he went a step further. What can I do to help open their heart? So I just want to go back and point that out.
Thank you, Catherine. That I'm so glad that you brought that up. I didn't even catch that. That's amazing. Such a great point. I think you should write a children's book about that, for sure.
I was thinking, actually, it's interesting because I was about to mention that same passage, that same area of the book, because, and it goes, it goes on to say, that, I felt weighing them down, there would be nothing blocking their heart from giving me the love I so eagerly desired. And so it all kind of is stemming, at least at this point in his life, that he has a desire to be loved. So he's doing it in order to be loved. But he's telling himself that he's doing it in order to allow others to love him, or to be more open to loving others. So it's just an interesting, that I noticed that, and also interesting that you brought up that same paragraph.
Well, I'm going to jump out in the live stream chat on YouTube. Samantha posted that, because I had made a comment about something about how I like to control and I don't want to accept, and sometimes I just need to accept, and allow myself to accept and be okay with it so I can move on. But she had made a comment about she thinks that sometimes we're addicted to our struggles, and I agree. And I think sometimes that's kind of the heart of it. This too is we're addicted to, we're so familiar with the struggle that without the struggle, without all that, we don't know how to, in essence, move forward, so to speak. And so also we get caught up with those things we learn and dealt with as a child, rather than being like him. Let me, help them open their hearts and love them by helping them open their own hearts. We just tend to, I myself am, from that, where I've, kind of, have closed off on some areas. And it's so much easier to stay there rather than be willing to step out and be okay. But as I grew up and as I have grown up from down here, I was taught that there are a lot of things that, I can't always help with what other people think or feel about me or how they say. But as long as I myself, have a good value of myself, and two, those that are around me that I truly care about and I value their feelings and opinions, I don't care what the rest of the world says or what they feel. They have no real overall. They do have an effect on my life, but in a sense, they don't have an overarching effect on my life. So why would I let what they say and do be the overriding thing that directs my life too?
Yeah, I get that, Dan. And sometimes I've noticed that when I'm working and I've got a a bunch of things going on, and I'm actually feeling good, I'm actually getting things accomplished, I'm working, I have purpose, I'm getting things done. But to the outside world, it may seem like, oh, I'm intense, because I'm focused on that. And I'm not recognizing everybody that walks through the door, or every little comment that every person in the room is making, or I'm not, trying to connect in an energetic level with every person in the room constantly, because I'm focusing on what I'm doing, and I'm bringing value to the team by doing that, and furthering my, what my goals while I'm doing that. And so having to stop and get out of that focus is actually kind of is a burden, or kind of annoying. And so to be like, for someone to step in and they think, well, Jason, are you okay? You seem a little stressed. It's like, oh, I'm just focused on things. And have to go around and every other second or every few minutes be like, I'm okay, and get back to work, I'm okay. You know, so people, you know, so I think that for us to expect others to be reacting to us or to be trying to connect at our energy level constantly, so that we can feel okay about how they feel, is a little, you know, might be construed as them being a little selfish, or kind of might, you know, might just be a little unproductive, and also kind of meaningless, you know, putting, because now you're the person who expects you to be connected with them energetically is now they're got bad feelings or bad energies about what they're perceiving, when it's has nothing that's directed at them, or nothing that's you know, technically negative. So they can be construed different ways. Was that similar to what you were saying, Dan? I'm sorry.
Yes, sort of, but just in general, because there are times where, you know, I've had people say things about things going on just, you know, in life or in general, you know, I've had people ask me about things about dealing with the pandemic and how I view certain things and stuff like that. And I've actually had a couple people tell me, well, you know, you're doing this or you're doing that. And I just looked at them and I'm thinking, I'm not going to waste my time and energy trying to fully always make you happy, because you in the long run really don't have a real overarching emphasis on my life. So therefore, why would I, you know, why am I going to let that energy, you know, bring me down? And so sometimes I think, you know, people get so caught up in all the things, you know, like me always trying to be a people pleaser. I tend to be that way in a lot of ways because of, you know, things I went through as a kid. But as I've gotten older and through, you know, from the time I moved down here and with my family here, I learned some things that I'm not gonna, you know, please everybody all the time. It's like that old saying, you can please some of the people some of the time, you can please all of the people part of the time, or whatever that, you know, that general saying, but you can't please everybody all the time. And at the same point, you can't, you know, you can't take everything to heart. But yet at the same time, sometimes people like me, we tend to sometimes, because I can get really worked up over something that somebody says. I have to then stop and kind of say, oh, wait a minute, you know, what does this really have? Where does it really fit in my life? And where am I letting what they say just because of something in a lot of times nominal affect me and, you know, and block, then it becomes a blockage for me, and I tend to block other things out then, rather than saying, okay, that's their feeling, that's their view, that's their perception. I'm okay with them being that way. Let me be okay with me and who I am, and let me help put out energy to help them open their hearts more to everything around that. In my head, I know what I want to say. I'm trying to find the words to say, you know, to help get to that higher level of consciousness where, you know, I and them are up here rather than here in our own little spheres fighting it out, so to speak, if that kind of makes sense.
I like how he kind of tries to remind us that when we work on ourselves, on opening ourselves up and relaxing versus struggling or fighting or whatever, is that other people tend to reflect that back to us. If that, I guess that's one way you could say it. And that, you know, because he was noticing as he was relaxing and as he was opening himself up to the, you know, to the greater consciousness, that other people would change also. And I've noticed that in my life, you know, particularly with my husband, as you know, it used to be kind of like, you know, try and, you know, I'd be frustrated with something he would do, or I would be upset because he wasn't acting in a certain way or whatever. And when I started working more on myself and my own perceptions of reality and my own interactions with our expanding universe and whatnot, is that that's when I would see in him changes that I didn't even try and make, you know. So it's kind of like this it's like if we just kind of can work on ourselves, then everything changes. You would change your thoughts, you know, just like when we read the book, you know, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Wayne Dyer. It was talking about the Tao, but it's like when you can change your perspective on everything changes. And that can be the same as with people. So when we change our perspective on people, so for instance, he's talking about our, you know, when he, instead of taking on whatever crap that they were shooting at him and assuming something was wrong with himself, he was recognizing that I'm okay. They're the ones that are struggling, and I don't need to worry about that. I need to focus on opening myself up to more love. And therefore, that resonance of opening himself up to more love meant that he was seeing that love reflected back to him from other people, even though he wasn't trying to force them to feel that way or force them to act that way or change the way that they were acting or being. Is that because he was more connected to it, that he was focused on love, as that he would see that love in other people. And it's such a great reminder that you know, what you focus on is what you see more of, and what you focus on is what expands in your consciousness and in your life and all of that. So when we're all focused on all the crap that we are annoyed by with everybody else, is then we see more of that stuff in our lives. And when we're focused on the things that we appreciate more in our lives, then we see that more in other people and other things. And that's been a huge helper to me, particularly in my relationship with my husband, because when I focus on the things that annoy me, then there's more tension and frustration and anger and blah, 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 and resentment and all of those things. But when I focus on the things that I appreciate and that I like and that I love, then I feel more of those feelings. And but like we said, we can get back to the other part of the beginning where, you know, we know what the solution is, and yet we block ourselves. We block ourselves from doing things that we know that we should do. And I think it is an addiction. I think it's, you know, we're addicted to our struggle. We're addicted to our excuses. We're addicted to complaining and bitching and blaming everyone else for all the crap that's wrong with us in our lives. And yet we don't have to do that. We can choose the other way. But again, I feel like a lot of it's an addiction to these emotions. And I think emotions are kind of like a chemical reaction within us, similar to foods. You know, we eat foods and we get the sensation, and it causes us to feel a certain way. And then we want more of those foods, even though we know they're not good for us. We're addicted to them. And I think it's the same thing with emotions, is that we can get addicted to anger. We can get addicted to, you know, resentment and frustration and discomfort and discord and all of those things. But we have this, chocolate. Exactly. Chocolate. So yeah, I think that we can make a change. We just have to recognize it, and we have to allow ourselves to, maybe we don't feel like we're good enough to get what we really want. You know, maybe we don't feel like maybe and I feel like this sometimes, is I feel like maybe what I want isn't what everybody else in my life wants. And so maybe I'm holding myself back to some extent because I think I'm going to make them unhappy, or that what I want is too selfish, or you know, and you know, I want for us all to live in harmony. And here's a thing right here, the whole I want us all to live in harmony, and so I'm trying to make things easier for them. But yet at the same time, if I allow myself to be open to the consciousness and allow for things to manifest in my life that I want, that harmony might happen naturally. So interesting. Just thoughts. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm going to bring up a personal situation that, and I've had a couple people say this, but one person says this almost every Sunday when I go to church. And if she's there, she always walks over to me and says, I got to get my hug from you. And she says, because she tells me I give the best hugs. And I've had a couple other people, kind of similar, not to the same degree, but that's a sense, kind of like a love, putting out love and, warmth and goodness. And if we all, and I love that feeling, because, there's a feeling that gets given and expressed and reciprocated, and it's a good feeling, and you don't want to let go of that. And, there are times where you get those feelings. Why don't we hang on to those type of feelings more, rather than grabbing on to, oh, well, you didn't do this way for me, or you didn't do that for me, or you didn't do the other thing for me the way I like it, because I like it done this way. Well, as I'm learning, you're not me. So you may have a different way. If I can learn to let go of that, and it, can, spread that way, rather than always the complaining, always this or always that. And if we, can get that out there more and get more people to grow with that feeling, I think, people would grab onto it more. Or at least I would hope they would, but sometimes, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't, because like you said, we're so addicted to all these things, and we're so, in a lot of ways, I hate to say it, me oriented. And, it's got to be, you have to do all this for me in order to make me happy, rather than me doing it for you and putting it out there and putting that love and warmth and that out there. So, like you said, because when you try and when you put that out, a lot of times you get that back. And yes, Catherine, I love hugs.
I like that you brought up the aspect of we're always like the me thing. Like that's a bad thing. We have this tendency as our culture that when we are focused on ourselves, that is just the worst possible thing that we could possibly do to everyone else in our entire existence, is to be focused on ourselves. And yet, from what these things teach, all these things that we teach, it's work on yourself first so that you can be better for everyone else. We have this block in our mind that being selfish is evil, and we're not, and from this perspective, this being selfish is not being selfish in such a way, it's like, cutting somebody off in a lane just because, we think we should go first. That's not the kind of selfish that we're talking about here. We're talking about working on ourselves, allowing ourselves to be better within ourselves, for ourselves first, because if we aren't better ourselves, then we can't be as good for everyone else, because we're struggling, because we're angry, because we're resentful, because we have all of these feelings that we're frustrated with, because we're blocking ourselves from our own happiness. And we are the only one that has the key to our own happiness. We're the only one that has the key to open the door to allow ourselves to feel love, to feel anything good. And this concept that being selfish or taking care of ourselves in some way is harder for everyone else is the biggest load of BS. And that's where I feel like a lot of our struggle comes from, is because we think that we're not good enough to take care of ourselves, or we think that we have to put everyone else before ourselves. And I know that's a huge, that was something that just came up for me when we were just having this whole conversation, is, that like this whole thing with us trying to find a property. I know I've been like harping on this. This is a big thing for us, is finding this property. We're all trying to make each other happy by finding a thing that we think everybody else wants. And yet we're like telling ourselves, okay, this thing I want isn't as important as everybody else. And so we've been stuck and not finding anything, because we think, it's just this mind-boggling thing. And like this whole idea of, me taking 40 minutes a day to do a meditation, or even 40 minutes every couple of days to do this meditation, I'm not doing it. I'm recognizing that part of it is because I think I need to be doing all these other things that are supposedly more important, because they have to do with the business, which is a thing that is for all of us, or it has to do with the household, which is a thing that my husband and I live in. All of these things I've justified that they're more important than myself. And if I would work more on myself, like I was more when we were in Georgia, that was a thing. I was very, very focused on myself, and that manifested into a lot of great things. But then now we have these great things that are happening, and I'm feeling like those are the things that are so important versus working on myself. So it's, paradox, or what is it? What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, and
I
that's
know we're past the top of the. Oh,
go ahead, Catherine.
I was just going to say, just as my final thought, Jason, you referred to state, the word state. I think that's the new buzzword for frequency, because frequency is a little bit woo-woo for some people. I think that there's this business about accepting what is brings relaxation. When you really think about that, anytime you're feeling aggravated or frustrated or angry or sad or whatever it is, typically it's because you're butting heads against something. You're not accepting something about the way things are, and yet they are. Like, it's almost insane to butt heads against these things constantly, because they are happening, whether we feel like they should be happening or not happening, or should happen a different way. This is reality. This is what's going on. And yet we fight against that day in and day out, and literally drives ourselves insane about that. And so I just want to bring us back to accepting and loving what arises, anything, whatever that is, and seeking that sense of relaxation. And I've said this before, but I don't think we harp on it enough. I get to the point where I just think, okay, everybody knows that, so I don't have to say that, but I want to say it again. People need to breathe. Whenever people are afraid or angry or in pain or frustrated or whatever it is, they're not breathing. They're sometimes people are barely breathing enough to keep their bodies alive. And so your breath can adjust your state or your frequency very quickly. It can shift you within seconds. And so if you need more energy, you're going to do a longer inhalation and a shorter exhalation, like maybe 8 in and 4 out. If you want to relax yourself, it's going to be a longer exhalation than an inhalation. This is a physical thing that you can do at any point in your day, and you only have to do it for about 3 breaths to feel the relaxation start to set in. And it is so freaking simple if we can just remember to breathe and get ourselves in a more relaxed state before interacting with people. The interactions will always go better, I can assure you that. But just the peace that it brings to your own body and your own system, and just, you know, meditations are come in so many forms. You know, crocheting is a meditation, painting is a meditation, walking the dog can be a meditation, as long as you're not out there walking the dog running through all the bills in your brain, okay? But if you walk the dog by going out into the forest and actually connect to those living beings out there in that forest, those trees, that grass, that air, everything, when you relax into that and connect and be there, be present with that, instead of just, you know, rambling on in your head like a lot of us do. If you just, even if it's 5 minutes and you can go outside and stick your feet on the ground without shoes or anything, even if it's cold, and just connect to Mother Earth, the energy that you can get from a tree or from grass is amazing when you can just like breathe in that energy and just accept that energy up into you. So there are very simple things. Meditation does not have to take 40 minutes. It can literally take 3 breaths to change your state or your frequency. So I hope you guys have a relaxful week and try to do these things that we, like you've been saying all along, Samantha, we know that we need to do these things and yet we don't do them. So just do some things. I love you guys.
Love that last thought, Catherine, and it's a great way to end up. Because I'm going to piggyback off that sentiment a little bit, because I've learned that when I get to a certain point, and a lot of times when I'm out Ubering, I get a lot of like in between rides, so I get to think a lot, and I think about some of the things going on in my life and some things, and I that's when I kind of work through some things and kind of taught myself through some things about, you know, stuff. But sometimes I come to that point after I've gone through some of it, and I get to the point in my family, we have this saying, in for a penny, in for a pound. And basically it means, okay, it is what it is. It's not going to really change by me sitting there going over it or thinking about it, or, you know, keep going over. Accept it, let it be. But usually as I get to that point, and I've noticed it a little bit more, I take this big, deep breath. And then I kind of, as I take that deep breath, and then I say, in for a penny, in for a pound, and I kind of exhale it out, and I feel better. And I've only been noticing that a little bit more. I've never put that 2 and 2 together before. But then all of a sudden I feel a little more light, I guess, so to speak. And I say, okay, I've resigned, I've accepted it. It's, you know, move on, you know. And then maybe I might catch, you know, listen to this song on the radio or something, because I always have my radio on, and then I kind of get into that and kind of lose myself in that. So I agree with Catherine. I think, you know, there are little things where little, you know, moments of breath, you know, taking that, you know, and for me, I've noticed every time I do that, I always take that deep breath and exhale, and it kind of just almost like I'm exhaling it out. It's weird. And I've never really noticed that before until recently. So I appreciate that thought, you know, that what you just said, Catherine. So that's my last little bit. And I guess Jason has a couple things to say.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Actually, I really love what Catherine was saying in regards to meditations and and finding that time for ourselves and finding the right type of meditation. Thank you for those reminders, Catherine. And that's really all I have to say. Appreciate you all. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Love you all.
Angel, any last thoughts or anything? Or you've been quiet all the way through, so don't want to totally leave you out.
No, it's all right. I don't really have much to say right now. So it generally processes later in the day. So it's like, oh, dang it. I just need to remember what to write it down.
Okay, no problem. Well, with that, thanks for joining us for the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Once again, we're going through the book, Whatever Rises, Love That, by Matt Kahn. Sorry, covering. And we're in chapter 4 still, and we'll continue on next week. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. You can always go to Facebook and find us at Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook. You can join the group there. You can also ask or get a hold of any one of us if you want to be a panelist on here and share your thoughts and views and everything like that. Also, if you want to get on and get involved with some of the books that we choose and stuff to go over through and review, love to have that too. Please don't forget to comment on our YouTube stuff. And with that, give a thumbs up and a like also. And with that, that's it for the Saturday Morning Mastermind.